before we get going, just a little bit of an introduction to me and who I am and why I'm here. So I have been in digital marketing for pretty much forever, it feels like. Since 2005, certainly, since graduating uni. So marketing graduates have always done marketing, just recently completed a master's in marketing as well. So it's kind of, yeah, I live and breathe digital marketing is kind of what I do. So before I was an independent consultant, which I've been doing for the past 8 years, I've worked in-house for 7 years in insurance, so I have some experience of financial services sector. Since then, since 2012, when I set up Skittish, I've been working with all types of businesses, so everything from B2C, business to consumer, to business, large corporate, multinational companies, right through to small one-man bands, so a wide selection of different companies. And in terms of the areas that we focus on, Skittish itself, we tend to focus more on Google AdWords and search engine optimization, but also optimizing websites so that people convert. So looking at that customer journey and how we map that through the website and how we can move people through from just being a search on Google to actually being a prospect and being a customer. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. So today's session we're going to cover knowing your customer. So if you tuned in for Johnny's session yesterday, and I've seen a few familiar names pop up because I was on the session as well, Johnny covered this as well, so there will be a little bit of repetition, but to be honest, it is really important, so I think that's a good thing. And I think if you're on some of the other marketing webinars, you'll probably find that it comes up again as well, but it is really, really important. So knowing who your target audience is and knowing how they use websites and how they interact with content is really important. The middle section is going to be about website content, structure, usability, how to make your website flow for customers, so how to guide people through the process. And then finally, we're going to look at some metrics that you can use to actually track whether your customer experience is any good, basically. So we can assess where it is now, and then you can track that improvement with any little change you make to your website. So if you have any questions as we go along, feel free to bob them in the chat. If I miss them, I'm sorry, I'll try and catch them as they come through. If I do miss them, we will have some time at the end, so I'm aiming to finish a little bit before 12 so that we've got time for Q&A. So if I do miss them, just paste them back in at the end and we can go through those. So let's start by looking at who are your customers. So who are they? And I know there'll be some people on the call that may think, well, anyone can buy from us. We've got a product that's pretty much universal. But that makes marketing really, really difficult. And I think Johnny said it quite well yesterday. He said that if you're targeting everyone, then you're not being strategic. And I think it's just definitely true. If you're trying to target everybody with the same message, you're only going to resonate with a really small proportion of your customers, even if they all are buying a product. So if you think of it in real life, you talk to different groups of people in different ways. So you wouldn't talk to your child the same way that you talk to your parent, and you wouldn't talk to a client in the same way that you talk to a colleague. You adjust the way that you speak to them, you adjust the type of content that you give them, the language that you use, and it's the same in marketing. You have different customers and they all like to be spoken to in different ways. So for example, your customer might come from a certain situation, certain circumstances that have driven them to come to your website. And you need to be sort of empathetic towards that and be able to communicate with them on a level that they understand, but also that makes them feel that they're a valued customer as well. So that's really important. So we've got, looking at the people who are on the call and the types of sectors, I'm just trying to think whether you're more B2B, B2C, and I think we've got quite a good mix of both, really. We've got some B2B in there and B2C, and some of you will probably cross over both. So that'd be interesting to know, actually. Is there anyone who feels that they both target other businesses but also individuals as well? So they're both B2B, B2C. Just pop a Y in the chat box so I can see those of you who consider yourself to be both. Yeah. Yeah. And that's quite common. And I think another thing I picked up from Johnny's session yesterday was that he said, we're not B2B or B2C anymore, we're P2P, we're people to people, and that is so true. But I think it is sometimes helpful to know whether you're in that, whether you are targeting individuals or consumers. So you've got a bit of a mix there, so some both, some B2B only. Okay, so that's great. So in terms of your audience and knowing your audience, it's thinking about who are they, what pains do they have, what problems do they have that you can potentially solve, and what drives them to come to your website in the first place. What's that trigger? What makes them come to your site? And this might be something that you've already thought about, especially if you're on yesterday's session. You might already have lots of notes on this. But thinking about why people buy from you is really important. So there's that element of creating the buyer persona, which Johnny talked about, which we will come to in a second. But there's also their motivation. So why do they buy from you? What's their biggest problem they're trying to solve? So buyer personas, these are a couple of, or three really simplistic examples of buyer personas, and you would probably go more in depth into these. So the one on the left, online Olivia, age 25 to 34, online shopper. So this potentially is a buyer persona for perhaps a fashion retailer, someone who is selling online. The middle one, business Bob, business owner. I thought this was quite a good persona for maybe a virtual assistant. This may be a sort of type of client that he might work with. Our marketing Mike, so an agency employee, so he needs professional imagery for his marketing collateral for clients. He works long hours, he doesn't have a lot of time, and he needs things doing fast. And this is probably, you could probably, if you're sort of photographers that are on the call, graphic designers, web designers, you'll probably relate to marketing Mike. He's probably one of your buyer personas. And I think the important thing about buyer personas is that you will probably have more than one. Unless you have a really simple product or service, you probably have several buyer personas. And what we would normally do from a marketing perspective is focus on the profitable ones, or the ones you want to attract more of. So it might be that you have 20 buyer personas, and that'd be a huge amount. Hopefully it would be less than that. Hopefully it would be maybe 3, 4, 5 personas. And you could then target the ones, select the ones that you want to talk to, that you want to target. And usually those are the ones that are most profitable. So you don't have to target everyone, you don't have to create a persona that includes all of your customers, because that's just not possible. But it's about creating someone that you can have in your mind every time you do something marketing related. So for example, with Skittish, with my business, we generally have 2 main personas that we work with. The first would be similar to Business Bob, would be the business owner who has little to no marketing expertise or little to no interest in marketing, and we take on the full role for them. And our other persona would be a marketing professional, so maybe like marketing Mike, I guess, but their reason for working with us is more that they either lack the time to do the digital in-house, or it might be that they don't have expertise in that area, so they might be more of a traditional offline marketing person. So we work with a lot of marketing managers and marketing directors, and we're that outsourced digital sector. So we have 2 different personas, and the way that we communicate with those personas is very different. So a business owner who's very busy, doesn't really have much interest in marketing, when we send reports on a monthly basis, we only really send them the sort of top level information that they need. So they want to know website traffic, they want to know inquiries, conversions, revenue, they want to know the big numbers. When we're sending reports to a marketing manager, they want more in depth, they want to know exactly what we've done, they want to know click-through rates, conversion rates, they want to know what device usage is, what demographics we've been reaching. They want really more in-depth, granular information from our reports. So we have to adapt the way that we communicate with our different personas. And it's the same when you're building your website or building any kind of marketing collateral. You want to tailor that content to who is going to be reading it. So, creating a persona. So you need to be thinking about several different things here. And again, if you're B2B and B2C, you will definitely have at least 2 personas. So you'll have your B2B persona and have your B2C. But you might have multiples of each, and that's absolutely fine. So if you're B2C, you might be thinking about things like demographics, so your age and your gender. What typically is the age range for your customers? You might look at things like family, marital status. So are they single, lots of disposable income? Are they married? Have they got 5 kids with little disposable income? You might look at their hobbies and their interests. So again, we're looking at business to consumer here, things that they do in their spare time, what are their interests, what they like to do. And another really interesting one is how they consume information. And that could be in the form of different formats. So do they prefer to read lots of text? Are they more a detailed focused person, so they like to read lots of information? Or are they very time poor, so they like to watch a quick 30-second video with subtitles? So how they consume information is really important as well. And that's also important on a B2B persona. You want to be thinking about how they consume information. So the B2B sector, you might be looking at things like what industry they're in, what's their job title, so maybe seniority in the company. It might be a specific person within that company that you would normally deal with. The size of the company as well would play a part, so that could be in terms of turnover or size in terms of employees, number of employees that they have, and also their location. So are there people on the call that would say they were national, or most people local, sort of servicing local area? Trying to put L for local, N for national in the chat box so I can see national, local, local. Yeah, lots of local, national. Okay, so good mix really, probably about 60% local, bit of both. Yeah. So we can then start to create this kind of avatar or persona. It's almost like a stereotype of what our customer would generally be. And then we need to think about what jobs do they need to get done. So what do they do in their day-to-day life that they perhaps struggle to do and that you can help them do? So whether it's streamlining things, saving them money, making things more efficient, what prevents them from doing these jobs? So what obstacles do they come across? What problems do they come across? And how do you help them? That's the key thing. How do you help them? So how can your product or service actually get them to where they want to be? So these are all things to have in mind, and you can start to build this persona. And there's templates that you can use out there. HubSpot have a really good template. If you just search for HubSpot buyer persona template, they've got a full worksheet and you can work through and actually build these personas up yourself if you've never done it before. It's quite a good exercise to do. But as I say, focus on maybe 2 or 3. Don't do every single buyer persona possible. Just focus on the ones that you want to concentrate on. So creating a buyer persona, the reason why we do this is so that you can get clear on who your website is for, and it's not for you. And this is probably the #1 mistake that companies make all the time, is that they build this amazing, fantastic looking website, but they've done it for themselves. They've done it based on the information that they want to share. And it's rare that people actually sit down and think, what does our customer want to see on our website? People always look at what they want to say and what information they've got. And everybody does it, so don't feel bad if you've done it too. I've done it as well. It's very difficult to do when you work in a business. It's very easy for someone on the outside looking in to say, you could do with changing that, this doesn't look too great, this doesn't help me at all. Someone from the outside looking in has a better perspective on it when you're in the business yourself. And I imagine lots of you are running your own businesses, perhaps even managing your own websites. It's really difficult to look at it from an outside perspective. So this is where you want to get someone else in just to have a look, and not a friend or family who will tell you what you want to hear. Someone who can be a bit more, objective and have a look at it. Thanks for that, Hannah. Hannah's just popped a link up onto the chat box if you haven't seen it to the buyer persona template and HubSpot website. So check that out. Thanks for that, Hannah. So it's getting people to look, or getting yourself to look at your website from someone else's point of view. And that's the biggest challenge when it comes to the user experience and journey mapping. So let's move on at this point to look at website content, structure and usability. So we're kind of using some different terminology interchange here, like user experience, usability, customer experience. And they all kind of, in some way they all relate, they all kind of do the same thing. And the user experience that someone has on your website often comes down to the usability of your site. If people find a site frustrating to use, then they will leave. And we are so much more impatient than we used to be. So we have to really think about how we deliver our information as quickly as possible. So, question for you, how long do you think it takes for someone to decide whether they like your website or not? How long does it take for them to make that decision? So if you want to put in the chat box a number in terms of number of seconds, 2 seconds, yeah. Any advance on 2? Yeah, 2 seconds. A minute, 3 seconds, 10 seconds. Yeah. So not a lot. However, research would suggest that it's actually 50 milliseconds. That's 0.05 of a second for you to decide whether you like a website or not. And that's scary, because quite often websites haven't loaded in that time. I'm assuming that's taking it from the time when it's fully loaded so you can see the full content, but 0.05 seconds and a user's made a decision as to whether your website is good enough for them to stay. So we need to up our game, and I think that's kind of where we're at. And I think it used to be, people used to say, oh, it's 9 seconds, and that went down to 4 seconds, and I think 2 seconds is one that I've heard as well quite a lot. And I think that's just getting faster and faster as things quicken up in terms of broadband speed and internet connections. We expect things quicker. So if you think of your website as being your shop as such, like a bricks and mortar store, you're not with the person when they look at your site. You're not looking over their shoulder telling them where to look for things, telling them what to click on. You're not there asking them if they need help with anything, unless you've got some kind of live chat function, perhaps. Maybe that's something we need to come back to. If you have that in a bricks and mortar store, you've probably got a member of staff there that says, you know, welcomes them to the store and says anything that I can help you with. And I don't know about you, but I'm a rubbish shopper. So if I go into a shop and a staff member approaches me and says, can I help? I say, yes, I need this, this, and this, and get them to get it for me, because I just don't have the patience to look around places. And it's kind of like that, but not having that staff member there on your website. So someone comes to your website and they're just left all on their own. So they're wandering around your shop, as it were, trying to find information. So this is why it's really important that you'll lay your shop out really logically and easy for people to find the information they need. So if you think of it as being your bricks and mortar store, if they wandered in, it looked like a jumble sale. Not many people have got the patience to start rummaging through piles of clothes and piles of knickknacks and accessories. People want to see clearly where they need to go. So if you go into a supermarket, you'll see everything is ordered in aisles. At the top of every aisle, there's a sign saying what's down this aisle. So you're signposted all the time, and your website is doing exactly the same thing. It's no different, it's just kind of virtual. So we make a judgment really quickly, and it's that kind of first impression that we want to really kind of get someone. If we don't get them at that first impression, we've lost them forever. So it doesn't matter how brilliant our website works, if that first impression is poor, we've lost them already. So just as an example, 2 websites here, both furniture stores, both selling sofas. Which one, if we say left, the left is kind of the blue one, right is the kind of the grey blue one. Which one on here would you most likely buy your sofa from? So put left or right, or L or R, yeah. Easier, right? Yep, I think that's unanimous. Yep. Oh, left. There's always one. Okay, yeah. So, why is that? I mean, you're all really, really quick. No one thought about that. You were really quick at putting those R's in that chat box. So why is that? Just put what you feel about that website on the right. What does that website say to you? Yeah, Ellie's too busy. The one on the right is aspirational, yeah. Attractive. Looks professional, that's a key thing, yeah. Menu is nice and readable, yeah. Okay, so Alistair, who said left, menu is nice and readable, and the font on the right is too small. Yeah, okay. Left looks cheap. So it's really interesting. So we had one vote for the left one, and the reason being that you can read the text on it, and that's actually a really good point. That is one thing that one on the left has got going for it, is you can read the text on it. The one on the right, yeah, I can't read with my glasses on, I can't read the menu on that. So the one on the right, although it looks amazing, it's not 100%. There's improvements that could be made on that. The right looks intimidating, a bit complex to navigate. Yeah, so it doesn't look as simple. So I think this is a case of, a lot of the time it does depend, although we've got pretty much a unanimous decision to the one on the right. We've got some things going for the one on the left as well. There's elements of it that we could take to potentially improve the one on the right further. So making the menu links bigger so you can read it, maybe simplifying that menu, because it looks to me like there's a lot of menu options on there, so simplifying that menu system. So we can see the product better on the one on the right. Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the key. If you're selling a product, then you need big product shots on your website. People need to see that. I don't think it's clear from the one on the left that they're selling furniture, although it does say furniture. There's no pictures. So if you're a visual person, you wouldn't necessarily know that they were selling furniture on there. You have to look at it a bit longer to work that out. So another question for you. When it comes to e-commerce websites, I'm not sure how many of you have got e-commerce websites out there, but I'm sure some of you will be, because I'm retailing online. The one on the left, would you give your credit card details to that website? Would you be comfortable doing that? Put N or Y? No. No. How about the one on the right then? Would you give your credit card details to the website on the right? Yeah. So a bit of a mixed bag. But you can see from that, I know it's not a scientific experiment with the people on the call today, but we can see, yeah, we'll look for SSL, brilliant. So SSL, for anyone that doesn't know, is the security on your website. So making sure the site is secure before you put your credit card details in, really important. But it shows that from your responses, we're seeing a tendency not to want to give credit card information to websites that we don't find appealing, that we don't like. So we need to get that first impression right. We need to make sure that people see us as a credible company, that we look trustworthy, and that they can give us their credit card details, especially if you're transacting online. And it might not be as severe if you're a lead generation website, so maybe you're just collecting people's email addresses and phone numbers. There's not as much of a security risk there, but you still need to get that reassurance and that credibility from your audience before they'll give out that information. So it's still really important to get that first impression right. So in terms of the sort of design and the content of your website, it's that simplicity. So making things really simple, really nice, easy to find information, nicely laid out. So think about white space and creating space around things, making sure that it's uncluttered. Thinking mobile first and fat fingers. So if you've got a website that's got really, really small text, you'll struggle to click on those links. So it's making sure that it works really well on a mobile, and it's really easy to find your way around on mobile as well. So if, for example, you've got big blocks of text, it's quite difficult to read that, so it's kind of breaking it down into chunks. And you can do that by putting it under subheadings, maybe splitting the paragraphs down a bit more than you would normally do, putting bullet points in, making things that are really easy to scan and read, just makes things a little bit more usable for people. And we know now that mobile is providing more and more traffic than desktop these days. It does depend on your industry still. I know from my website, we're still about 80% desktop traffic and 20% mobile. But for the majority of our clients, it's more mobile than desktop. So it's not an option anymore. Mobile usability is a thing that everyone needs to be doing. And you need to get people's attention as quickly as possible on a mobile as well as a desktop. So similarly with page loading speed as well. So thinking about how fast your site loads. We're not in the days of dial-up anymore, where people will be quite happy to sit and wait for a website to load up. And for those of you that remember those days where you'd sit and wait for the dial-up to connect, and then you browse to a website and the images would load like a line at a time, and it just slowly revealed itself as the data started coming through. And we would happily sit and spend hours looking at websites like that. And I doubt anyone would do that now unless it's something they really, really wanted to see. if people land on a website and it's starting to load slowly, it's quicker to hit the back button and search again for somebody else. So it's keeping your site loading quickly. It's really important. And we're going to go through this in a bit more detail. We're going to look at things that slow your site down in a second. So above the fold is a term that comes through from newspaper advertising and newspaper stories, that you wanted to get your story above the fold. If you fold the newspaper in half, it's basically the top half of the page. And we use that terminology in websites as well. So above the fold is essentially the first screen that people see before they scroll down. So it's that top of the page. And I think one thing that's quite sad at the moment is this fashion to have a huge image at the top of the page and nothing else visible, especially on a laptop screen or a tablet screen. And when you load up the site, all you get is a big photo or sometimes a background video playing, and there's nothing else on there. There's no call to action, there's nothing telling me what the website is. It's just a big visual. And that visuals can be great, but it means people have to scroll down. And there was a study done by a chap called Jakob Nielsen, Nielsen Norman Group, and they looked at the time that people spent above the fold and the time that people spent below the fold, and it's about 80% above the fold and 20% below. So it's that bit at the top of the page which is the key thing. So making sure you've got a call to action up there. So we're going to talk about calls to action quite a lot. So a call to action is essentially telling someone what you want them to do next and pushing them to that next step. So a call to action could be call us today, it could be add to cart, it could be send us an email, it could be buy this product. It's the action that you want the person to take and you're explicitly saying on the website. So having that above the fold, having a button above the fold that says call us today, having your phone number above the fold, all these things help to improve the user experience and help to push them through that journey on your website. So an example of how not to do it. This site is very typical of one that you would have found back in the late 90s or early 2000s. I'm pleased to say this site has been redesigned since this screenshot was taken. But if we just look at this for a second, what's your first thoughts on this? What do you think as soon as you see that? What's your first impression of this website? Drop that down in the chat box there. Busy, yeah. Crikey. Too busy. Yeah, back button, headache. Yeah, too much information. Hard to read. I always find it stressful looking at that website because I don't know what they want me to do. There's so many calls to action. So you've got across the top, you've got the free phone, there's a call to action. You've got don't miss a thing for the email sign up, that's a call to action. You've got like us on Facebook, another call to action. Then down the right, you've got the cruise sales slash, you've got deal of the day, more calls to action. You've got a comparison site, you've got top 10 daily deals. There's so much going on that site. And it's all really close together. If you imagine trying to scale that down to a mobile, it just wouldn't work. And thankfully we don't see many of these. You do get the odd one every now and again. I come across the odd one and I think, wow, this site's been around a while. And this one, the date on this is 2013 at the top, so it was still live in 2013, which I think is quite, well, 7 years ago. It's still relatively recently. This was the site that they were using. And it would be interesting to see what kind of conversion rates they got from this, how many actual bookings they got. I think if it was someone who'd maybe bought from them in the past, they would kind of put up with it. But if you're a new customer and you landed on this site, what do you do? What do you look at first? That's kind of my impression of this. So the thing is to try and avoid putting everything you've got to say on one page. You've got a whole site, you don't need everything on your home page. So it's kind of scaling it down a bit and getting them key information on there. So as a complete opposite of that, what do we think about this homepage? Pop that in the chat box. So this is Slack and their version of the homepage. Any thoughts on this? No, all gone quiet. Easy to read. Yeah, simple message, one simple message. further info button, yeah. Yeah, I like that. You picked up on the things I would have picked up on actually. And I love Slack, it's a great website. And the thing that actually annoys me about Slack is that because I already have an account, the sign-in option is really small underneath. It seems to be more aimed at the new customer. If you're already an existing customer, the sign-in button is really small, and on a mobile it's even smaller. And they do have the launch Slack option at the top. But for me, I'm looking for a sign-in option. If I'm already a member, I've already got an account, I'm looking for sign-in or login. That's the kind of words I'm looking for. So launch Slack isn't something that I would be looking for, essentially. I'd have to think about that one. And the whole point of usability and user experience is not making your audience have to think about it, so being really obvious. But the good things about this, it's clear, it's uncluttered. The menu items, you've got why Slack, so obviously information about why to purchase from them, what solutions they offer, what resources they've got, enterprise version, and the pricing. So everything is quite transparent, quite simple. And we've got, essentially there's kind of 3 calls to action. We've got the launch Slack in the top right for existing users. And then for the new customers, we've got try Slack and see the demo. So we've got try Slack for those that are ready to sign up. So they've got all the information that they need and they're just ready to go. And then you've got the see the demo for people who want that, a bit more information. But like someone mentioned about they'd like to see like a more info button, and I kind of agree with that. It might be that there's more information below that if you scroll down, but I would quite like to see a bit more written information as well, rather than see the demo. A lot of the demos that you see on these software sites, they want you to sign up and they want you to arrange a phone call, and that's quite a bit of a commitment. Sometimes you just want to have a little browse through yourself, so having a bit more information would probably improve that. So took me a while to work out what they do. Yeah, exactly. So I suppose I'm a little bit biased in it because I use the software already. I already know what they do. But yeah, Slack replaces email inside your company. But what does that actually mean? So if anyone doesn't know, Slack is kind of like a instant messaging forum type place where you create like a little chat like we've got going here, where you can chat to people, have messages, different channels for different subjects, different groups of people. And it's a great tool, and it's relatively user-friendly itself, but the website is one of the better ones in terms of getting people to sign up. So it's thinking about this. One thing that's quite nice about Slack is that there is a big background image at the top, a huge background image, but you don't really notice it because it's not really, it's a bit abstract, it's a bit nothing to do with what they do, so you're not distracted by it. One thing that distracts me is the background videos that you see, and I think they look great from a sort of design point of view. But then I quite often find myself sitting there watching the video in the background and not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Clearly that company wants me to interact with them in some way, but all I'm doing is sitting and watching the video in the background. Sometimes it's more of a distraction than anything else. So they're probably a bit complacent since they get a lot of new users. Yeah. A bit slack. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it. We're going to look at an example later on about how companies that have already got a name for themselves, already quite big out there, are quite complacent when it comes to their user experience. Another stat that I found quite interesting was 50% of internet users say they won't recommend a business with a poorly designed website on mobile. So if your website isn't well designed on a mobile, not easy to use, that more than half people just won't recommend your business as a whole. So that's quite a scary one. So thinking about the mobile design and the sort of the responsiveness of your website, we want to make sure that people can access that site on any device that they're on, whether that's mobile, tablet, desktop, and all the devices in between. There's that many devices now. It's not just mobile and desktop. There's a huge amount. I have a small laptop, so I have a 13-inch laptop, and I quite often find that on a website I'll see the tablet version. It looks a little bit mobile version rather than the full desktop version because my screen's quite small, which makes the experience not as great. So it's being mindful of how your website looks. And I think it's one thing that we don't do. Once the website's launched, we don't really check. We don't really look at how our website's doing on different devices unless someone points something out to us. So it's important to revisit that, especially if you're adding content, adding new pages all the time. Those pages might change the way your site looks and feels. So checking what it looks like on different devices. There are tools out there that you can do, like little simulators where you can put different screen sizes in and it will adjust the size of your website. So they're quite useful. But yeah, making sure that everything fits on that mobile screen. An example of a company that we worked with for a while, they'd had a website built and they'd spent a lot of money on the website. I won't say how much, but the price of a small house, we'll say, on a website, so five figures. And they were told by the website company that it worked on mobile, and so that was fine, that box was ticked. When we started working with them, we were looking at their Google AdWords and how they were driving traffic to the site, but they weren't really converting that much. And we found that about 30% of their traffic was coming from mobile. So they did have a big B2B sort of side of their business. So they got a lot more desktop than mobile, but still about 30% were on mobile. But the actual conversion rate for mobile visits was only about 3%. So it was, the percentage of sales that came through the website, 3% came through mobile and 97% came through on desktop. Now we do find that quite a lot, that desktop converts better than mobile. However, this was quite a big gap. We expected more to be converted on mobile. And when we looked at it on the mobile, we found that it did work on a mobile, but the design wasn't responsive. So all it did was shrink the website down to the size of a mobile screen. And as an e-commerce website, if you think of something like Amazon, if you had to use the desktop version of Amazon on a mobile and scale it down to sort of your mobile screen size, it would be very, very difficult to use. Just clicking on the links would be impossible. So we had to look at rebuilding the site and creating a more mobile-friendly, responsive site to then increase conversions. And it did. Within the site, as soon as the site was launched, we pretty much started to see an increase in conversions on mobile. So it's making sure that it doesn't just work as in it functions, that it actually looks really nice on mobile as well. And it might be that if your site is huge and cluttered, if you've got lots of information like Amazon, for example, you might want to think about a mobile app or a specific mobile website, or perhaps showing less content on a mobile site. So getting rid of like the peripheral information and just focusing on the key messages, just to make it as simple as possible. So another stat for you, 39% of people will stop engaging with their site if a website loads too slow, if the images won't load or take too long to load. And it's a big problem, websites loading slower. And I think we have, as web designers, we have started where we've tried to optimize websites as much as possible to load quickly when everyone was using dial-up. And then when broadband kicked in, we started using bigger images, maybe introducing a little bit of video, because people are on faster connections. And then as we've got fiber and super fast connections, we're now putting background video in, we've got lots of huge images and galleries, and we've got all this sort of big, sort of heavy content that we're trying to put out on our websites. But it slows people down. Not everyone's got a great connection. And I think that's really important to remember as well. If your target audience are quite rural and their website, their internet connection is quite hit and miss, then that's something that you really need to consider in terms of your user experience on your website. Are they having to wait around for images to load? So, and also the mobile side of things, if you're not on your Wi-Fi at home where you've got decent connection, if you're on data out and about and it's a bit patchy, then you're going to struggle to load a lot of the images. So let's look at a few things that can slow your website down and what you can do about it. Images and video are probably the biggest ones, and something we come across a lot is photos being uploaded to websites and not resized. So if you take a picture on your digital camera or on your phone, and the photographers that are on the call today will vouch for this, the file size is huge. If you were to print it out full size, it would be like bigger than your house. It would be absolutely massive. The size of the image on your website only needs to be maybe, even if it's a full screen width, maybe sort of 1200 pixels wide. So it doesn't need to be the size of a house. It needs to be smaller. But the problem is if we upload it full size, although the website will resize it to the size of your website, the browser still has to load up the full file size. So it slows down how your website is loaded. And the same with video as well. If you've got YouTube videos sort of embedded on your site, quite often the browser will load up the entire video even before it's played. So they'll be loading that up in the background as your site's loading it, and it can really slow things down. So what you can do about that, resizing images before you upload them to your website. So there are free tools to do that. I mean, we tend to use Photoshop. I appreciate that's a very expensive piece of software just for resizing photos. But there are services online where you can do bulk resize, where you can upload images and they'll resize it for you. They're a little bit, they're kind of free for a reason. It's kind of a nice simple way to do it, but you kind of lose some of the quality in the images. There's also plugins for WordPress. If you've got a WordPress website, there's plugins such as Smush, S-M-U-S-H, so Smush, and that will compress the image file as you upload it to your website. So that's something to look at if you're uploading images to your site all the time. And another thing is delaying loading. So delaying when images load. So you might have seen that if you're scrolling down a long page, the images kind of fade in or suddenly appear as you scroll down. So what that's doing is it doesn't load up the images as soon as the page loads. It waits until that image has come onto the screen and then it loads it. So it means it puts less pressure on the server to show the whole page in one go. So it kind of speeds up the speed at which the site shows information. So delaying the loading of images is a really good way of doing it as well. And the code of your site. So this could be something that you can or cannot do something about. And if you've built your website yourself, if you've got a bit of technical knowledge, then this is probably something you could look at. But if your site was built by somebody else, it's probably outside of your control. But quite often, the way that sites are built, especially now with things like WordPress, content management systems, that you get a lot of unnecessary code on your website, which is the code that the browser uses to construct the site, but it doesn't necessarily need to be in the background of each page. And it could be things like scripts, things like styles, so the things that make your website look nice. So things like telling it what font to use, what colours to use, how to lay out the site. These are all styles that we apply to our website content. And these should all be in a separate file, but quite often you see styles actually in the HTML code of the site itself, and this slows the site down. The browser's having to read through all this extra code that it doesn't need to do. One of the big culprits for things like that is plugins. So if you've got a WordPress website, you've probably got one or more plugins installed on that. So WordPress as a website platform is fantastic. It's the most widely used platform now. And it's great. Out of the box, WordPress actually does very little. It's quite a simple platform. The way that we make it do more for us and increase the functionality is by adding plugins. So your plugins could be for a contact form, for example, an inquiry form would require a plugin. You might then have a plugin like Smush to resize your images. You might have a plugin for security. You might have a plugin for an image gallery. You might have a plugin like an anti-spam plugin as well for your comments. There's so many plugins out there. You might have a plugin for like your cookie banner that comes up. There's a plugin for everything. That advert, there's an app for that. There's a plugin for that, definitely, with WordPress. The danger is that you just go overboard and you end up with lots of plugins. And the main problem is that WordPress is what we call open source, in that lots of people contribute to the code behind WordPress. And the plugins themselves, they're not built by WordPress, they're built by individuals, they're built by other companies, third-party companies, or individual programmers. And these plugins are then added to your site without them knowing what your site is or does. So they have to code it in such a way that it will work on pretty much every WordPress site. So the easiest way to do that is to put lots of scripts and lots of styles and lots of extra code onto your page to make the plugin work. And the problem with that is every plugin that you add on adds in more code, slows your site down even more, and we end up with slow working sites. We've witnessed this a lot with our own sites that we've built, but also sites that we've inherited, that when sites start to slow down, there's usually an issue with the plugins. And it's trying to kind of streamline that. Which plugins do you actually need? Which ones could you do without? Oh, a biggie for us was one client site was really struggling on site speed, and the two things actually that were slowing it down the most. One was a YouTube video on the homepage, and it was trying to load up the full video. It was about a 3.5-minute video, so it's quite a big file size. It was trying to upload that every time the homepage loaded. So removing that, I think it knocked about 10 seconds off the load time. And then the second thing was a live chat. So we use Zendesk live chat, which is a great feature. If you've got a product that people need to ask questions about, great to have that live chat on there. However, there's quite a lot of code involved in loading up that live chat feature. So although the particular site that we were working on, the company wasn't using the live chat that often, it was just kind of there as a messaging service, it was slowing the site down. So we started a discussion, do we use it, do we not use it? We decided we weren't really using it, so we removed it, and that knocked about another 4 or 5 seconds off the load time. So really, really important to sort of consider whether you do need these plugins or not. And a little tool, actually, I'll put it in the chat box down here, it's called GTmetrix. So gtmetrix.com. And that will, you basically put in your website and it will run a scan of it, and it will tell you how quick your site's loading. It'll give you the number of seconds, number of files it's trying to download to render your website. So that's quite a useful little tool just to give you a feel for how your site's performing. And then kind of lastly well, it isn't lastly, there's actually multiple things that can slow your site down, but one of the biggest ones that we get is the server itself. So the server is essentially the big computer that your website sits on, so that it can be served to users. So the server itself is something that is often outside of your control, unless you have your own dedicated server. Your server is likely to be a shared server run by a hosting company. That's probably 99% of the websites out there. And the problem we have with that is that you're sharing that server with lots of other sites, and it might be you've got tens of thousands of sites sharing the same server as you. What that does is it can potentially slow your site down, because those websites might be doing something, for example, sending lots of traffic, or they might be showing lots of big images or videos, and that slows your site down as well, because you're all on the same server. And there's not a huge amount you can do about that, apart from moving hosts. But that's kind of a last resort, really. That's kind of the last thing that you do. We've done that a couple of times with clients where the host just hasn't been able to improve the speed, and it's been gradually getting worse. So we've moved the site, and it's made a huge difference moving to a different host. But that's kind of the last resort. So after you've ruled out everything that's wrong with your site, then you would consider the host at that point. So, one thing to note is that it's not always possible. So if your site is built on, so we've got WordPress, yeah, so lots of images in the media library rather than display on the website. No, not necessarily. It's only if they're on the website itself, it would then start to slow it down. So let me know in the chat what platform your website is built on, if you know. So it's WordPress, put WP. If it's something else, pop that down there, so just get a feel for what you're using to build your website at the moment. Yeah. WordPress. Rocket Spark, oh, not heard of that one. WordPress. WordPress and Weebly. GoDaddy. Squarespace, yeah, I've hosted on Squarespace before. So we've got quite a lot on WordPress. And I think it's kind of standard, really. We do have, Squarespace is quite a nice one. I had my site on Squarespace for a couple of years and then moved it back to WordPress, long story, but I like Squarespace, it's quite nice. I'm assuming with GoDaddy, you're using like the GoDaddy website builder tool that's on there, it's like the free tool. The great thing about WordPress is that if you have any issues with your host, you can then move that WordPress site to any other hosting company, pretty much. Most hosting companies will host a WordPress website. So you can basically take it from one and put it on another with no change. The user wouldn't know anything had changed, apart from hopefully it would speed up. It would just move straight across. the problem with some of the other ones, like Squarespace, for example, so I moved my site to Squarespace and back again. So you can export the content from Squarespace, but not the design. So you would essentially have to build a WordPress website on another server and then import all the content in to the new site. With Weebly, we've got on there. Not sure about Rocketspark, how that works. The GoDaddy, the free website builder, you essentially can't really move it. You might be able to export the content in terms of the text and the images you've got. You might be able to export that into a file and re-upload it into WordPress. I'm not entirely sure. But if it's on their website builder, you essentially, that's where you're hosting it. You can't move it. So if you had a problem with GoDaddy, you would then need to look at another, either rebuild the website in WordPress or potentially rebuild another free tool. So that's kind of the downside of using the free website builder tools, is that you don't have that kind of autonomy to move it from one to the other. And if you did need help with it in the future, there's lots of WordPress developers, lots of web designers that use WordPress who can help. But when it comes to the free ones, a lot of them won't work with it. We don't tend to work with the free website builders because of the restriction on functionality. But I appreciate to get a website up and running really quickly, really cheaply, and they do look pretty good. The free ones are what people tend to go for. So yeah, so moving the site could potentially help, but that would be a last resort. And it might be that if you do have a WordPress site and you've got a really good hosting company that you work with, asking them is anything that they could do or suggest. I use a company called CloudNext to host mine, and they have 2 different web packages. They've now got a bespoke WordPress hosting package, and we found it's a lot faster than the standard hosting package. So we moved quite a lot of our client sites across to the WordPress hosting, which has improved things. So your host might be able to offer some suggestions as well if you do find that your site loads slow. I mentioned the GT metrics tool, and I think it's important to use that rather than just trying to load up your site yourself and test it, because you've probably been on your website recently and they always load up quicker when you've been on your site before, because your site, your images, things like that are stored in the cache on your computer. So because it knows in your browser, so it knows that you've already been on that site. So it's already got that data downloaded and stored, so it loads a lot quicker. The other way to do it is to use a different browser or sort of clear all your cache from your browser to try and get an idea of how fast it loads. The GT metrics tool uses like a fresh download of everything, so it gives you sort of a baseline basically, so it gives you a bit more of an accurate result. And in terms of speed, this is where we want to be looking at less than 5 seconds. So we talked about how fast people judge a site. In terms of how fast it needs to download, it needs to be less than 5 seconds. That's kind of the optimum, really. So, next thing to think about. So, moving on from the techie bit. So my PowerPoint's frozen, just bear with me a second. There we go. It's about talking to your customers. So don't talk at them, talk to them about them. So you want to be using words like you and your more than we and our. Another tendency that companies have is to shout about themselves on their site. So they'll tell the customer that we've won this award and that we've been in business this long and that we can do this and this is our expertise. And they don't really relate that to how that helps the customer. So the customer's left thinking, so what? What's in it? What's in it for me? How does that benefit me? So it's thinking about how you help the customer and think about how what their problems are, how you understand their problems and how you fix their problems, make them feel important. And then getting the right content in the right places. So think of your website as a journey, as an almost a funnel that you want the customer to go through. So you've got to make sure that you're giving them the right information at the key points through that journey. So on their homepage, or on your homepage, should I say, you don't need every bit of information about your business. If you have an about page on your company, and there's quite a lot of talk actually seeing quite a bit on LinkedIn about whether about pages are redundant, whether we need them anymore, but I kind of think that we still need them because we still want to talk about us and what our business does and what we've achieved and what our credentials are. but put it in an about section or an about page where people can go to read it if they want, but the home page should be about you, about the customer, not about you. And avoid distractions. So put pop-ups, cookie banners, anything, adverts that distract users for what you want them to actually do. And I know cookie banners are a legal thing. We need a cookie banner on there to say that our site uses cookies. However, it doesn't need to take up the whole page. It doesn't need to be massive. It doesn't need to be in your face. It can be a little bit more subtle, not hidden because it has to be explicit, but it doesn't need to be that big. I mean, I don't know if anyone else has seen those huge ones that are pretty much the full size of the screen, and they just go and block everything. And it's a full paragraph about their privacy policy and how they use cookies and that you have to accept it. And on a mobile, quite often you can't even see the accept button because it's that big, it fills the entire screen. So it's trying to make people stay on your site without distracting them, without giving them a reason to hit that back button. And I think the huge cookie banners as well kind of put a bit of fear into consumers that you're doing something you shouldn't be, so you have to put this disclaimer on there. And I think it's really important that the cookie banner is there to reassure people that you're responsible with your data and not that you're trying to track people illegally or anything like that. So things like pop-ups, sign-ups to newsletters, I've used them myself. I kind of think, yeah, it's a good way to build your list, but how many people does it turn off when these pop-ups come up all the time? There's a site that I use quite a bit, I think it's Social Media Examiner. Some really good content on there, but there's always pop-ups. So as soon as you go on, there'll be a big banner that pops up. As soon as you start scrolling down, another one pops up. Then as you get to the bottom, another one pops up. And it's just constant distractions all the time. You can't read the content that's there. So it's things that distract people. If you've got something on your site that's really prominent, but actually you don't want it to be prominent, then do something about it, move it, change it somewhere else. So it's thinking about attracting people's eyes to the right areas on your website. So if anyone's looked at any kind of eye tracking softwares, people generally look at websites in kind of an F shape. So they look down the, sort of from the top left down the left-hand side, and then across the top, and then they look in the middle section. That's kind of where their eyes are drawn to. So you need to be avoiding distractions in those areas. So having banner adverts and things like videos playing that are unnecessary in the middle of the content can sort of distract people. So think of your site as a journey. Think of the structure of your site and how you can guide people through that. I could probably bet that the majority of people will get the most of their traffic landing on their homepage to start with. That's usually the most common landing page. And you could check this if you've got Google Analytics installed on your website. If you look under I think it's the behavior section, you can see the top landing pages, and I can guarantee your homepage is probably the first one, or at least the first in the top 3. Most people land at the homepage first. So that's kind of the key. That's your first impression. That's where you've got to grab people and get them to move on to the next stage. And this is quite interesting because Slack do this quite well, and that the top of their homepage is essentially, it's just calls to action. It's just, what do you want to do next? Pushing people through to the next stage. There's not a lot of information unless you scroll down further to tell you what it is. It's kind of, it's there to signpost you, and you get to choose which direction you go in. So the homepage, you need to reassure people that you're in the right place. So you need to tell them exactly what you do. And I know we said with the Slack one, if I just kind of flick back to the Slack example on there, I suppose to me it does tell me exactly what they do. It replaces email in the company. But they're not being that explicit with that. I understand that not everyone would understand that. So maybe that's something they need to look at. Maybe that strapline underneath, that keep conversations organised in Slack, does that need to be more explicit? Does that need to explain it a bit more? But it's reassuring people that you do the right thing that they're looking for. And then it's providing a clear call to action. This could be different depending, like with the Slack example, it could be different depending on where that customer is in their buying journey. So the customer might be at that initial kind of research stage, their discovery stage. They don't really know what they want yet. They just know that they need something and they need more information. They're just doing the research. They're not really ready to buy. in which case you need the link for more information, the demo, that type of thing. You need to push people through to that. But then you'll get the people that are actually, they've done the research. Maybe there's just a few more questions that they need answering. Maybe you've got an FAQ section you could point them to. Maybe you've got some little video tutorials that might help sort of push them over into making that decision. Or it could be that they've already made the decision, they've done the research, they know they want to work with you, they know they want your product or service, in which case you just want that big buy button. You just want a big inquire now, you want to get them straight through to your contact page. So you kind of want to give people options, but not confuse them too much. So one company that we worked with, it's quite a long time ago now actually, they had essentially 4 calls to action, so 4 buttons on their website in the top right hand corner, and they were one under the other. So there were 4 buttons stacked on top of the other that all said different things on them, but essentially looked the same. And we found that the top one was actually what they wanted people to do, was to go through and get a quote. And the others were things like retrieve quote, request a call back, I can't remember what the last one was, make a claim, something like that, as an insurance company. There was not just these 4 buttons, there was a lot of kind of clutter around it as well. And we decided to do a bit of an experiment, and we redesigned that corner of the website, and we put the get a quote button on its own, lots of white space around it, and then the other 3 buttons in a different section underneath. And the conversion rate, so the click-through rate on that button increased by about 70%, just from redesigning it and moving that button out there. So really important to get those calls to action clear, but don't confuse it by grouping them all together. Like with that cruise website we looked at, where it was just wall-to-wall calls to action, you want to make it sort of nice and obvious and uncluttered. So once they're on your website, if they're the type of person that needs more information, they want a bit more idea of what your product or service is or does or how you work, you then want to get them signposted through to the sort of service product pages where they can find out more information. And one really big mistake companies make here is that they have a really good product page or service page, loads of information on there. They might have a video on there as well explaining it. They've laid it out really nicely. Then you get to the bottom of the page and there's nothing. There's no call to action, there's no contact us, there's nothing. So for them to contact the company, they then have to scroll all the way back to the top again and find the contact page. And it's just a lost opportunity because you're making them work for that. Don't make your customers, your users work. So it's trying to get a call to action at every step of the way. So they might just scan through and think, yeah, that's fine. So call to action at the top will be good, but having a call to action at the bottom as well, if it's a long page, is a really good idea. And then you want to push them through to the next step, and hopefully that's going to be buying something. It might be a contact page, an inquiry form, depending on the type of business, it might be a booking form, or a checkout page. And you want to make this process as simple as possible. So only capture the information that you need. One business that we did a bit of an audit for, they have a sign-up form just for a newsletter, and really all you need for a newsletter is an email address, maybe a first name so you can personalise it, but an email address is the only really required field for that. And they had 15 form fields to fill in, 15 that you had to work through to sign up for a newsletter, which just seems really odd because I mean, it's quite difficult to get people to subscribe to things anyway, but to make them jump through 15 hoops to get on that mailing list. And they wanted to know everything from your job title, the size of your company, what sector you were in, and your turnover, really quite detailed information just to be on their mailing list. So don't do that. Make it as simple as possible for people to contact you. If you've got an e-commerce site to check out, make sure that's simple, that people can do it as a guest, not have to create accounts, things like that. So all this kind of structure of your website is what we call information architecture. And it's just kind of a posh term really for how you organise the information on your website. And you've got classification hierarchy. So this is where you would organise the different pages on your website. So you would have kind of your top level pages where it's the key information, then you kind of drill down into the more granular information that people need. And it might be that your site's really simple. You might just have 5 pages, 10 pages on your site, and you don't really need all this, that you can really get by with just one menu system and that's it, which is great. But if you do have lots of pages, it's worth reviewing how you kind of classify them and what hierarchy you put them in. And from there, you're looking at things like labels and tagging. So if you've got an e-commerce site, so tagging products, adding labels to them. If you've got a WordPress site and you're blogging, adding tags to your blogs, they create another way for people to find related content. So it helps people use your website better. It helps people find their way through their site, through your site, and find more related content. So tagging content works really well. And then the navigation and wayfinding, which is key, being able to find your way around a website. And it doesn't just stop at the menu system at the top, it kind of goes into other areas as well in terms of internal links and what we call contextual links, so links within the body of websites, so links within the text itself. If you're talking about one product on another product page, link to it, so hyperlink that word, that image, whatever it is, to that other page that you're talking about. Signpost people, help people find that information. And the search thing, so if you've got a huge amount of content on your website, you're going to need a search box. And you could probably argue that everyone needs a search box on the website. And it isn't just for huge websites, because if you have a small website, you're probably still going to get users on your site that would prefer just to search, because they don't like searching around for things, they're impatient. Like myself with shopping offline, I'd rather just someone tell me where it is rather than having to look for it myself. So all these things add up to a really good information architecture and improve the user experience on your website. So a really good example of this is Amazon. And I think, I'm wrong to say everybody uses Amazon, but it's probably one of the most used e-commerce platforms. So Amazon is great. If you wanted to find something on Amazon, you go type into the search box and it pops up. Excuse me. But have you ever tried using Amazon without using the search box? So this is something that I tried myself, but I'll give this a go, because you just get really complacent that you go to Amazon and you type it into the search box, or you might even have the Amazon app on your phone, which makes it even easier. So I tried going to Amazon, and I'm going to get you to do this as well if you can. On the desktop version, so amazon.co.uk, desktop version, so I'll try and find a rolling pin. Just a random object. I don't actually need one, but I thought lots of people are talking about doing baking at home with the kids at the moment, and I thought, yeah, how would you just locate a rolling pin on Amazon? Because you know that they sell them, they sell everything. But doing it without using the search box. So what I want to do is challenge you to have a go at this now. And what I want you to do, so open a tab. So if you've got me in like a full screen mode, you might need to go to the top, and I think there's an option to change the view options to, and it's like exit full screen. It will just kind of minimize the screen a bit so you can go back to your browser in the background. And go to amazon.co.uk and attempt to find a rolling pin, but without using the search box. So you're not allowed to conduct a search. You've just got to use the menu navigation to do it. Now, I reckon you could do this with the search box in about 5 seconds. So I'm going to be really generous, and I'm going to give you 30 seconds to try and do this. So I'm hoping you're all on board for this. I'm going to get my little timer here. I'm going to give you 30 seconds, starting from now. No using the search box, just try and use the navigation to find a rolling pin. And that's 30 seconds. So how did you do? Did anyone manage to do it? Anyone find a rolling pin in that time? Oh, yeah, one rolling pin. Someone's done it. Just, yeah. Just got to cookware. Not in time. No. Yay, someone else has. So I tried this myself. I thought I'll give it a go, see whether I can do it. Started a couple of seconds later, we'll let you off. Kitchen appliances. Yeah, see, I went to Home and Garden, and then I think I browsed to, I was torn between kitchenware and bakeware, and I was thinking, is it kitchenware or is it bakeware? So I went into bakeware, started browsing through the products, nothing that looked like a rolling pin, and then it said page 1 to 400, there's 400 pages. So then I'm starting to think, I don't have time for that. So I was trying to look at the filters, whether I could filter it, and thinking, I'm going to filter by brand. I don't know who makes rolling pins, I don't even know. Filter by material, thinking, well, wood, and I could potentially do that. Filter by colour, wood coloured. So I gave up after about 10 seconds. I thought, no, this is just too difficult. And the kind of message with this is that even a huge website like Amazon, a massive company, their user experience is really poor without the search box. The only way they get away with it is because there's a search box on there, which makes it easy. In their defence, they do have around 58 million pages on their website, and they're just the ones that Google's found. So they've got a lot of information to organise and make it easy for people to find things. I doubt we've got anyone on the call that's got that many pages on their website. If they have, good luck to you on that. Definitely have a search box. So you're probably dealing with a lot less pages. But that search feature just makes our life so much easier, makes it easier for people to find that information. And we're going to look at how you can track that on your website as well in a second. So other websites that do really badly as well, user experience, so things like eBay. I just find that terrible to use, and I'm not an eBay user, but my other half is, and I look over his shoulder as he's adding items to sell on eBay thinking, how do you know how to do that? That is not intuitive at all. But they've got such a big audience and such a huge marketplace that they can kind of get away with it. And I think Facebook's as bad as well. Facebook, I use it, so I'm familiar with it. But if you sit someone down in front of Facebook who's never used it before and watch them try to use it, it's not a good user experience. It's really not intuitive. It relies on people using it because of that fear of missing out. So people just get by. We don't have that option when we're a small business of being able to say, well, we're a big company, we don't need to focus on our users. We need to be doing it all the time. And it doesn't just stop at the sale as well. It does go through user experiences, what happens after that. So if you've got a site where you capture people's details and you then want to get back in touch with them, so it might be that you send them an email confirmation, an automated confirmation saying, thanks for your inquiry, we'll get back to you, and manage the expectations. So tell them when you're going to get back to them. Little things like that, rather than just an email going off and then you're not hearing anything back. And it might be that they take a week to respond and that's standard for them, but you don't know that. So it's really important that you communicate that. And then that follow-up process, or the order process, how do you follow up? Do you kind of keep in touch? Do they know what the next steps are going to be? Do you then need to arrange a meeting? Does the customer know that? So it's kind of keeping them in the loop at all times. Delivery and onboarding process, so that you're delivering the product or service, making sure that they know what's going to happen. Example of that where this kind of went wrong for a company that I had some dealings with from a consumer point of view. So we'd ordered a mattress from a company and it was a non-standard size. It was a super king size, so they didn't have it in stock. So it was a delayed delivery on it. I think it was 2-week delivery. Fine, we ordered it, we paid for it, waited 2 weeks, didn't turn up. Waited another week, didn't turn up, phone customer services. Because, oh yeah, your mattress is here, you've just not told us when you want it delivering. It's like, oh, well, now? Why would we need to tell you when we want it delivering? Oh, well, as soon as you've ordered it, we send you an email asking you when you want delivery. Well, we didn't know this. It didn't say this as part of the order process. They did email us, but it went into our junk folder, so we didn't see the email confirming it. So I then dug the email out and replied to it and said, tomorrow, to see if we could get it delivered. I just thought, how odd. I mean, that's kind of, you would expect if you bought something online, I mean, you'd pay for it, that as soon as it comes into stock, it gets delivered. You wouldn't think you would have to then say, please can I have it delivered? So it's kind of a non-standard customer journey. And when that's the case, if that's ever the case, that's when you really need to be communicating clearly and openly, this is what's going to happen. And what we thought was odd was after 3 weeks, no one had got back in touch with us. They'd sent that email saying when do you want it delivered, I think the same day that we'd ordered it, and then never followed up on it. So they'd got our money and they'd got our mattress, and we weren't ever going to get it unless we suddenly dug that email out of the spam folder. So what that kind of, yeah, it made me think, why did they not communicate that? All that required was a little note at checkout saying this is the process, this is what will happen next, and then there wouldn't have been an issue. But it makes you think twice about ordering from that company again, or recommending them, or if you did, it would come with a disclaimer that this is how they work. So managing expectations in that sort of delivery onboarding process. And then customer retention. A lot of what we focus our website on is our new customers, getting new customers through our website, but it's so much cheaper to keep our existing customers. And we'd be wrong to think that our existing customers don't go to our website, because quite often they do. Depending on what product or service we sell, they might go back to our website, they might have questions about our service, they might have sort of support issues, they might just want our contact details. They'll want to go back to our website to find the information. So to completely rule them out of your website and just be focusing it on new customers, it's kind of missing a trick really. We really want to keep the existing customers engaged as well. So we've got half an hour left, and I'm going to move on to the last section about measuring user experience. So one of the key things with any kind of marketing is measuring things. What things that matter get measured, or I can't remember what that saying is now. What gets measured gets done, is that it? Someone correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, we need to be measuring things, and we need to know whether what we're doing is actually working or not. That's kind of the key thing. If we make all these changes thinking, oh, if we move that button over there, that will improve this, that will improve that. How do we know that? Is it just kind of what we think? We really need some data to kind of back that up. So I'm a big fan of Google Analytics. It's such a great tool. For the most part, it's free. There is a paid for version, but you don't need to look at that. The free version is absolutely adequate for pretty much everyone. Great for tracking traffic to your website and monitoring where traffic comes in and where it leaves. So that's kind of a key thing with the user experience and the customer journey is seeing where people come into the site and then where they leave, and if it's where you expect them to leave or not. And tracking sales and inquiries are what they call goals in analytics. So let me know in the comments. So if you have, so we'll give you 4 options now. So option A is you've got analytics installed, you've got access to it, and you check it regularly. B is you've got analytics installed, you've got access, but you don't check it. C is you've got analytics installed, but no access. Or D, you've no analytics and you've got no idea what I'm talking about. So A, installed, access, checking it. B, installed, have access, but you don't look at it. C, installed, no access. D, no analytics, or don't know. Oh, AdZoomer. I've heard of that, but I've not used it. Interesting. B, yeah. I think most people fall under B. I do quite a lot of analytics training, and I think most people come on the training course because they fall under B. They've got analytics, but they don't really look at it. And if you don't look at it for a long time when you log in, it's quite overfacing because there's so much information there. You don't quite often know what you're looking at. There's quite a lot to it, that's for sure. We do a full day session on analytics, so obviously I'm not going to go into that in the last half an hour, but just kind of a few of the reports and analytics that should help you identify any issues with your website and with your user experience that you can maybe look at. So the first one is a goal conversion rate. So you would need to set up goals in analytics to be able to view this information. So a goal is essentially what you want someone to do on your website. So a goal could be, you could create a goal for a sale if it's e-commerce. You could create a goal for an inquiry if it's a lead generation website. You could create a goal for viewing a particular page on your website, or viewing a number of pages, so like an engagement goal, or people staying on your website for a certain amount of time. You can set that up as a goal. You can set goals up as particular events on your website, so people downloading something or clicking on a particular button. There's quite lots of ways you can create goals. We can't go into sort of the technicalities of creating each goal in this session, so you would need to have that set up to view this report, but hopefully if you go into your analytics and go to your admin and the goals section, it sort of talks you through setting up a goal in there, or just Google goals, Google Analytics, and there'll be some tutorials there. So the first thing we'll look at is goal conversion rate. So this is essentially the number of goals that have happened on your website divided by the number of sessions on your site. And you can view this over time. So this is what we would usually do. So this, what we see on the screen here, this report, the goal conversion rate is 3.43%. But over the period that we're looking at, so from the beginning, I think it's from the beginning of January through to around about April, you can see the goal conversion rate drop suddenly. In April, about the time of lockdown, conversion rate suddenly drops. So you can see over time what's happening, and hopefully you'll be able to have some ideas to what's caused that. With this one, you can see that it's happened at the end of March, early April. So we kind of know that it's worldwide events that have caused this. But it might not be that. You might have spikes and troughs at other random times. And there's lots of things that can affect the conversion rate as well, not just the usability of your websites. That's really important. One of the clients that we work with, the e-commerce website, they will have a really bad month for no other reason, and the advertising campaigns are running brilliantly, but then they're just not converting. And usually we'll go back to the client and say, you know, we've done really well, except we've not really converted any. And the client will always come back and say, yeah, we ran out of stock, so we weren't able to sell anything. So it looks like the conversion rate's low. So stock issues, pricing issues can all affect conversion rate, not just the user experience. But it's a good indication if you've not changed anything else as to whether things are working or not. The other one that we look at is bounce rate. Bounce rate is quite complicated really in terms of how it works and what it means. So your bounce rate, you'll be able to see this in your audience overview report. You can even change the top graph, so I've circled it there. You can change the top graph to show bounce rate over time. And bounce rate is affected by lots of things as well. So you generally find that you get a higher bounce rate if you do a lot of blogs. So if you publish a lot of blog posts, submit them to social media and get lots of traffic to your blog post, you'll find that people come to your website and read a blog post and then leave again, and Google classes that as a bounce. So Google's definition of a bounce in analytics case is a single page visit. So they only look at one page on your site. It doesn't track how long they've been on that page, so it's just a single page visit. So it's a little bit misleading, because if they've come to your website to read a blog, they could have read the entire blog, shared it with their friends on social media, and then left again. They've actually engaged with your site in a good way, but Google will still see that as a bounce because they've not clicked through to another page on your website. It's one of the reasons why you find on blog sites that you'll get like related articles at the bottom. So you finish reading, there's like a related article section. It's where then you click in and viewing another page on the website, and then it reduces their bounce rate because you've looked at 2 pages, so you're no longer a bounce, you've been engaged. So bounce rate can be higher if you do a lot of blogging. Bounce rate can be higher as well if you've got traffic coming from social media. That can be because they're just coming to look at one thing and then they go back to social again. It can be that they accidentally click. So we find that quite a lot with like Facebook advertising, that people accidentally click on adverts because they're scrolling through with the fingers and then they quickly hit the back button again. So it looks like they've been on the site, but they haven't really. You usually find bounce rate drops down low if you've got like a comparison site or a site that people will do lots of research on. Accommodation sites, things like that, tend to have really low bounce rates because people have to view more than one page to use the website. So they tend to have a lot lower bounce rate. It's not something that I would say get hung up upon. It's something that you should track long term, but not look at it in isolation. So the actual screenshot on the screen shows there's a sort of a peaking bounce rate towards the end, where for about 3 or 4 days the bounce rate went up. I know because I know the account that this was taken from, that it was over a weekend, and we ran 2 Facebook campaigns over that weekend. So the traffic spiked hugely over that weekend with the traffic from Facebook. And it was driving people to blog posts. So people were reading that blog post and clicking back. So it's had a negative effect on bounce rate. That doesn't worry me at all. I don't think that's a bad user experience. I think we could reduce that. I think we could add maybe some more links within those blog posts to try and push people through into other pages. But it doesn't worry me too much. I understand why that's happening. And in terms of what's a good bounce rate or a bad bounce rate, it really varies. I mean, this one's 64%. This is an e-commerce website. If they didn't do any blogging on social media, it would be a lot lower. But because they do a lot of blogging in social media, it's at that 64%. Probably an average for our clients is probably between about 45 and that's probably one of the highest, 64. That's probably kind of our average. We do get some that are really low, and we do get some that are higher, but generally that's kind of the average bounce rate. So things to look for bounce rate is sudden changes, unexplained changes, because that could be an indication. If you've changed something on your website, perhaps you've rebuilt your website or redesigned the homepage, keep an eye on the bounce rate and see what happens to that after that change. Did it have a positive effect or a negative effect? Really important to monitor it in analytics. And then the other report that I like is the behaviour flow. So it's kind of a nice visual representation of what happens to the traffic through your website. So down the left-hand column, you've got your landing page. So this is where they come into your site. The top one there where it says 4.9K, it's just got a /. So your home page is always displayed as a / in analytics. So they come into the home page, they then go through into other pages on your website, and you can click on each individual landing page and it will highlight the path that they took. The red on the right hand side on the starting page, you get the red like little waterfalls coming out of the green boxes, for want of a better word. The red there, you can actually, when you're live in your account, you can hover over that and it will give you the percentage drop-offs. So these are the people, they come into that page and then they leave, so they drop off at that point. If you've got particular pages where people are dropping off, so this one, the blog pages are generally where people drop off, which is what we'd expect. But then we've got people dropping off at the home page and the product pages. So that's kind of where we want to focus our attention. Why is that happening? Could we make changes to those pages to keep them on there for longer? So that's behaviour flow. I also mentioned before about your site search. So having a search box on your website, you can track what people type in. So with analytics, you can see what terms people type into that search box, what they're actually looking for on your website. Really, really useful information for a number of reasons. It can help you reorganize your website and maybe reprioritize how you structure it. So if there's particular pages that people are looking for and you think, well, actually, we do have a page for that, but it's hidden away. Do we need to make it more prominent? Do we need to make it more obvious? It's also great for content marketing. So if you're looking for content ideas and what to write about for your next blog post, what people are looking for on your website, if it's something that they're looking for and you think, we don't actually have anything on our site that caters for that, but we could create a blog post about it or a page for it. Really good for content ideas. So this is under analytics, it's under the behaviours reports, and it's just called site search. And you have to set it up. So if it's not already set up, you go into your settings, it talks you through it, but you just add a little search parameter in and then just start tracking straight away. So you can see all the terms that people type in. So we used this with a client who had like a Google search feature on their website at the time. I'm going back quite a long time now, probably about 10 years. And we installed this, we tracked all their searches through their site, and the top thing by far was either recruitment, jobs, vacancies. Everything was about creating jobs. And they weren't a recruitment company, they were an insurance company. So people were actively looking for job vacancies, wanting to come and work for them. And we did have a recruitment page on the website, but it was down in the footer. We had like some little footer links, these tiny little sort of kind of small print, like privacy policy links at the bottom. And thought, well, perhaps we need to make that more prominent. So we kind of promoted it to the top menu, not the main menu, but we had like a little sub menu that had about us, contact us. So we promoted it to the top menu. It really improved the amount of traffic to the page, we increased the number of applications and CVs we're getting through. It really helped us to see how we could improve the user experience on our website just by tracking what people were searching for. So to summarise what we've been through, what we've gone through this morning, hopefully it wasn't traumatic for you. Hopefully you've picked up some useful things. To summarise, we've looked at being clear on who your customer is and why they're visiting our website, what's driven them to go to your website on that particular day, and how can you talk to them that's going to make them relate to you in a personable way. And be even clear about what you do and how you help them. So how does your product fix their problems? Thinking about them all the time, so using you and your rather than we and our. Making your website all about the customer, not what you want to say. Structure your website in a logical way, so thinking about how you structure the menu system, but also the information contained in each page, and how you use calls to action on each page to push people through that journey. And then keeping your design simple and mobile friendly. Really key to keep it mobile friendly. So check it. So after this session, check your website on the mobile, click through every link, click through every page. See which ones work, which ones don't. You might find you get the odd page where you'll get an image overlapping the text or something really odd looking. It's a really good opportunity to start fixing those little things. Keeping your design simple. And then measuring the user experience, so user experience UX. Measuring it using Google Analytics. Lots of you have got it installed. It's just a case of logging in every now and again and checking. Identify issues and then track improvements over time and see how you can identify those. So there's a little bit of recommended reading if you're really interested in sort of user experience and how people interact with websites. There's a couple of or 3 good blogs. UX Matters, the Nielsen Norman Group, which I mentioned earlier. They do lots of real-world tests with focus groups and eye tracking software and all sorts. Really, really interesting. And UX Booth, they do a lot of blog posts as well about user experience. And then a really great book, and it's really old now, the original, I think it's about 2000, I said really old, 2006 I think it is. It might even be older than that, but really, really common sense, as it says, common sense approach to website usability. They have done a revamped version which includes the mobile as well. I've still got the old one and it's still relevant. Everything in there, although it looks really dated in the screenshots, it is really, really relevant. And you can pick up second-hand copies on Amazon pretty cheap as well, really easy to read. So if you're looking for a bit of reading in these lockdown days that we're now in, then yeah, try Steve Krug's Don't Make Me Think. So we've got about 10 minutes left. So if anyone's got any questions about anything that we've gone through, fire away, just drop them into the chat box. I'll try and answer them as they come through. Any questions? Or if anyone's found it useful or what bits you found useful, that would be good to know. How could you resize videos? Good question. To be honest, I don't know. That would be a video production person's question, really. I mean, if I were you, depending on what your website's built on, you can delay the loading of the video. So if you've got a video on your website, you can delay that loading until someone clicks play, which helps. In terms of resizing it, I'm not sure whether you can without compressing the quality of it. Not something that I could answer without going and ringing my video production guy. Sorry about that. Really useful, that's great. Or redesign at the moment, good time to be doing that. Helpful, current process. Great. That's great. Glad you found it useful. Hopefully there's just been the odd little tip or trick that you've picked up from today and you found it worthwhile. And I think that's kind of it for, oh, in most of the images. Yeah. Still loads slow, about 20 plugins. It could be, or it could be the server. So that one's gone just to panelist. So someone's just asked about the images are smaller than 300 kilobytes. The WordPress still loads slow, using about 20 plugins. So 20 is, yeah, it's not the most I've seen, but it's still quite a lot. Do you think it's good with a plugin? It could be. What do you think about photographs of yourself on the homepage? Yeah, I put a picture of myself on my homepage and then quickly removed it again, just because I don't like seeing myself on there. But yeah, if your business is you, I think it's really important that you do have a picture of you on your homepage. It depends what you do. I'm working with a coach at the moment, and really important that people get to know that person, because they're going to be obviously speaking with them, coaching them. And having a picture or a video of that person on the homepage is going to be a really good way of making that connection. So I think it is a good idea. How many plugins are too many? Again, it really depends on what the plugins are and what they're doing. I think the most we've seen is probably about 40 something, which is way too many, and we managed to get rid of about half of them. The rest were still used. It's very difficult to build a website without plugins, to be honest, because WordPress functionality doesn't really allow for a lot to happen. So you do need some. And sometimes you can have just one plugin that causes all the trouble, like the live chat plugin for one client's website caused all the trouble. So removing that plugin meant that we could add another 4 and it wouldn't have made a difference. So it can be the individual plugins themselves. Learned loads, that's great. Good to hear. Okay, I think that might be all the questions. I think my co-host is somewhere in the background. We need to check back over again.
Yes, I think we've got all of the questions answered at the moment. But just so well, that concludes today's webinar. Thank you, Heather, again, and for sharing all of your insights, which was really useful for me, basically, to seeing how the good and the bad website looks like, and what are the ways that you could improve it, and obviously setting the goals on Google Analytics that we obviously haven't had enough time to go through in much detail. But if people are interested in that kind of area, I think they can outreach to you, and then obviously you will be able to take them over that kind of specifics all on how to set them up. Okay, I think we've got more questions if you don't mind.
So GG metrics, loads within 4.4 seconds. Concerned that the page speed is below average, and then scoring recommendations, leverage browser caching, optimizing images. Any advice, please? So we generally optimizing images. That's interesting. So it's kind of implying that the images may be the wrong size, or they're too big, that potentially they could be made smaller to fit the space that they're in. Sometimes the optimizing images, it's to do with the format in which they're saved in as well. So it might give you more detail underneath. What we actually outsource a lot of this. If we have issues with this kind of technical stuff, we use a web developer who specializes in WordPress and page speed issues. So they tend to deal with this for us. What you could do as a first thing would be to try resizing the images and just running it back through again and seeing whether that makes any improvements or not. That would be my first thing. The browser caching one, that's more of a, as far as I'm aware, that's a server thing that you have to enable. So it might not be something that you could fix anyway. It would be something that the server would do, but I could be wrong on that. It'd be one that I'd have to go away and Google, come back to you on it. Saving images in JPEG, depends what the image is of. So if it's a photo, then a JPEG. If it's a graphics or logo, for example, sometimes the file size is smaller if it's a PNG file. And if you need a transparent background to it, it would need to be a PNG file. But generally for photos, it would be a JPEG format, yeah.
Okay. Any more questions? I mean, the more guys, the more you ask, the more you're going to take away from this. So, you know, keep them questions going. Right, I think that's all of them. And just before we leave, I just want to say that all of these slides will be sent over to all of you in a follow-up email, and there will also be a questionnaire sent to you as well, like a survey. And we would be really grateful if all of you could complete it, because that feedback is really useful for us to improve our webinars moving forward. And yes, we've got one more question.
Yeah, how often do you check Google Analytics? That's a good question. It depends on the site, but generally we do like a full check once a month with a report to the client, and then we would dip in and out probably once a week to check it. It depends. If we've got something like a big campaign going out, we're generally tracking it quite keenly. If we're just running campaigns kind of in the background and we're not doing anything major, we would just check in at the end of the month. And it depends on how much volume of traffic we get to the site as well. So if it's a really big site that gets lots of traffic, we'll check in more often. But yeah, once a month it's like a big check-in, and then once a week for little check-ins, just check that little thing.
Okay, great. And okay, one more.
How much do you charge for optimizing a website? Ooh. It depends what he's doing. So it's a bit of how long's a piece of string. So what we would do is have a little bit of an audit, and then we'd come back to you with a quote in terms of what work he's doing and how long that's going to take. So we usually work on an hourly. Based on that, we work out how much time it's going to take. So yeah, it varies. So it's a ballpark. So it could be anything from maybe £200 up to £2,000. That's kind of rough ballpark figure for it, but it varies.
Okay. And I just wanted to say as well that we've got our webinar for tomorrow, 10 a.m., same time, same place. And the webinar will be on how to design your very own website. So for all of those of you who are interested in having your own website, or you know, improving your current one, that's a really good webinar to attend. And it will be delivered by Melanie Kant. You can book this webinar on our website today, and you will also be sent an email, follow-up email with a booking form, so you can fill that in, and obviously you can attend that webinar tomorrow at 10 a.m. as well. And yes, I think we've got no more questions for now. So yeah, thank you, Heather, again. We'll be having more webinars in the future, and I hope all of you took some really key useful advices from this webinar, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I do wish you all a very good afternoon, and stay safe and stay home, everyone, and goodbye now.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.